Burke Lakefront Airport, wrapped in controversy for decades, home of the Cleveland Air Show. However, this lakeside airport is full of history, unique innovation, underappreciated value, and possibly borrowed time. Nestled on the shores of Lake Erie, the city of Cleveland was founded on July 22, 1796. The lakefront brought much prosperity to the city in the early days, as the rivers and lakes in the area allowed trade to flourish. By 1910, the city had grown to become the sixth largest city in the United States, with a booming automobile and steel industry and thriving arts and entertainment district. In 1867, concerned citizens lobbied the city to build a lakeside park in the area near where the current Brown Stadium is, between East 9th Street and West 3rd Street. Once a peaceful park with walkways and bridges, the park fell into decline in the early 1900s as a railroad and industrial growth led to decay and toxic pollution that destroyed much of the park's landscaping. After the Wall Street crash in 1929, the park became a shantytown built by hundreds of homeless or jobless Clevelanders as a result of the Depression. To combat this homeless problem, several influential and wealthy Clevelanders put forth an idea to clear the area and build a World's Fair type event in the location. This event would be known as the Great Lakes Exposition of 1936. During the exposition, future ideas and plans were proposed, displayed, and developed about what use the lakefront could be to the city. Eventually, the most practical solution that was proposed was for transportation facilities, either marine or aerial in nature. The proposal contained the early building blocks for a lakefront plan that included the entire shoreline of the city of Cleveland and would contain an aviation point which would become Burke Lakefront Airport. The lakefront area where the park and Great Lakes expositions were once located was not suitable enough for a full-fledged airport. Nevertheless, a lakefront location for an airport was seen locally as a huge draw for tourists, businessmen, and Clevelanders alike. Proposed as only a short 10-minute drive from Public Square in the center of the city, it was viewed by many as what could be a great alternative to the more distant Cleveland Hopkins Airport. In 1946, the sounds of construction rang out across the lakefront as construction began on what Cleveland manager William Hopkins called the official Lakefront Development Plan. Construction on a dike retaining wall in Lake Erie by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers began, with the interior filled with hundreds of tons of dirt dredgings from the Cuyahoga River. On August 25, 1947, Mayor Thomas Burke, for whom the airport would be named, officially opened the first airport located in the downtown area of a major city. Over the next year, the Army Corps of Engineers continued to develop what would become the permanent airport by depositing over 700,000 cubic yards of dredging on both the east and west ends of the temporary runway. Continued growth would continue through the 1950s, where a grant from the federal government led to the construction of a concrete runway, terminal, and control tower. In the 1960s, Lake Central Airlines moved their operations to Lakefront, and a Nike missile facility was built near the airport. A Cleveland classic returned on Labor Day weekend in 1964, as the Cleveland National Air Show and air races returned to the city for the first time since Bill Odom's crash ended the 1949 air races. The Labor Day tradition has continued over downtown for the past 60 years and brings tens of thousands of people to watch the high-flying acts and daring feats. The 1970s saw more expansion at Burke Lakefront Airport with a focus on attracting more small airlines, providing destinations such as round-trip flights to Detroit, Michigan. The short-lived Wright Airlines was even based at the airport. The increase in numbers of flights and passengers from the 60s into the 70s produced a need for construction of the new west and east concourses, a second runway, and Aviation High School. No growth came to Burke for the 1980s, but the facility did host the first Cleveland Grand Prix auto race on July 4, 1981. The 90s saw the airport shift its focus towards general aviation and business travel, with operations peaking at over 100,000 flights in the year 2000. The airport would become home of several flight service companies, flight schools, and news and medical services. 1997 saw the airshow celebrate its 50th season with the dedication of the Marjorie Rosenbaum Aviation Plaza, and the International Women's Air and Space Museum would open in the airport's main terminal in 1998. The year 2000 would be the high point for Burke Lakefront Airport. In 2000, the airport saw over 100,000 flights. By 2022, that number dropped to around 40,000. Economic challenges stemming from the post-September 11th terrorist attacks and airline mergers would change the face of aviation in the 21st century. Longtime hub airline at Hopkins, Continental Airlines, would merge with United Airlines in 2012, and the airline would close the hub and cut service. Some smaller airlines and business travelers who once may have considered Burke transferred their services to Hopkins Airport. According to a 2024 study conducted by the city on the future of the airport brought in $508,000 in revenue through parking and income taxes, of which nearly a third comes from the operation of the airshow. The airport also loses over $1.2 million in operational costs per year and requires a subsidy from Hopkins in order to remain operational. The study also found that the airport contributes approximately $76.6 million of direct economic activity, including airport operations, private passenger service, medical transport, flight training, and non-aviation related activity that uses the airport for office space. The city estimates that, should the airport close, $45.1 million of economic activity would remain in the city of Cleveland, and $67.0 million would remain in Cuyahoga County if existing operators were to transfer to other Cleveland airports. The city would also save the $1.2 million operating costs annually should the airport close. However, the city concluded that the economic benefits of the airshow would end, as the show cannot be moved to Hopkins or County Airport due to operational issues or space constraints. The closure of Burke Lakefront Airport has been debated for decades. In the 1960s, the city considered closing the airport and installing a new heavy-lift crane at the West 3rd Street docks. Over the years, various mayors have announced intentions to close the airport, only to abandon them due to the challenges imposed by state and local governments involving the operation of airports, as well as lease agreements with various tenants who use the site for their operations and business needs. In 2023, newly elected Mayor Justin Bibb announced his intention to close the airport for a new development project that would transform the existing lakefront area. In 2024, the Cleveland Browns announced the purchase of land in Brook Park, adjacent to Hopkins Airport, for the construction of a new stadium and the planned closure of the existing Lakeside Stadium. The city actually offered Burke's land to the team for the new stadium, but concerns about developing on the existing landfill and airport closure timeline lead the team to abandon that proposal. On October 13, 2025, the city of Cleveland and the Browns came to an agreement that would allow the team to move to Brook Park in exchange for $100 million back to the city. That money would be used to partially fund the Lakeshore Development Project, the new Cleveland Hopkins Airport Master Plan, and the redevelopment of the Burke Lakefront Airport property. The team is expected to move into their new stadium for the 2029 NFL season. However, significant challenges remain for the city to actually close the airport. In 2022, the city of Cleveland began working with CHA Consulting to develop a plan to close the airport. Citing falling traffic and revenue, the city began to look at the financial challenges of closing the airport. FAA regulations require that airports remain open if they have received grants until they expire, or be forced to repay them back to the government. The airport also has several lease agreements with tenants who use the property for their busyness needs. In 2018, the airport reported $23,347.59 in lease agreements with tenants. The report concluded that the city has 3 legal methods in which to close the airport. The first option that the city has would be to wait out the expiration of the remaining FAA grants that the city has received for the airport. Doing so would not require FAA approval to close the airport or repayment of the grants, but would keep the airport open until 2036. The city would still be responsible to pay back grants received from the state of Ohio at a total of $1.5 million. and to continue to fund and maintain the airport without receiving any additional government assistance until its closure. The second option would be for the city to apply to the FAA for the legal closure of Burke Lakefront. If granted, the city would be required to pay back the remaining state of Ohio grants, as well as federal grant obligations of $7.9 million. The city would also be required to improve alternate airports to show net benefit to aviation, as well as identify a new relief airport for Hopkins in the event of an incident or increase in traffic. The final option would be for the city to petition Congress to bypass FAA requirements and close the airport. This option requires substantial support from elected representatives and could eliminate the cost of federal grant repayments. The airport would be required to pay back the state of Ohio grants, and the speed of the closure would be dependent on Congress. Regardless of which option the city would take, they would open themselves up to potential lawsuits from businesses and individuals who benefit from keeping the airport operational and could drag the possible closure out for years. The city would also be required to terminate and repay lease contracts, providing the contracts are still active at the time of the airport's closure. Some of the lease agreements involve the operation and maintenance of the landfills that the airport was constructed on. The facility was built on land dredged from the nearby Cuyahoga River, as well as solid wastes, as part of the land that is now the airport was once a municipal dump until the 1950s. The city would be required to obtain a permit from the Environmental Protection Agency to redevelop the land. Significant construction challenges would be likely to construct new structures on the property that would add significant cost to their construction. As of the time of this report, the environmental studies have not been released. While expensive, construction on a landfill is indeed possible. Battery Park City, a neighborhood in New York City, was constructed on the landfill created by the construction of the original World Trade Center in the 1970s at a cost of over $200 million at the time. As of now, the city has not released any plans as to what they hope to build on the property if the closure of the airport is approved. On October 22, 2025, Cleveland.com reported that the city has asked Congress for help shutting down Burke Lakefront Airport and to repurpose the 450-acre waterfront site for public access and job-creating development. The city argues that the airport has outlived its usefulness and that repurposing this land will unlock transformative potential that could deliver billions in long-term impact for the city, county, region, and state. The Cleveland National Air Show, at over 60 years old, is one of the oldest air shows in the world. It is the spiritual successor to the National Air Races that were held at Hopkins from 1929 to 1949. Can it survive the closure of Burke? The air show cannot be moved to Hopkins because that airport is too busy to shut down for several prime hours to host the event, and city law put into place following the 1949 Bill Odom crash prohibits aerial acts above the city's neighborhoods. However, there are other options. Many lakefront or oceanside cities currently host air shows, such as Fort Lauderdale, Miami, and Chicago. These shows are often free for residents, with special seating near show centers set aside for those who are willing to pay for it. This option would allow the air show to continue on the lakefront with aircraft staging at other airports. The downsides would be lower revenue from tickets and concession sales, and the loss of the static aircraft that are parked for attendees to enjoy. However, some of the waterfront air shows consistently rank as some of the best in the world, and with some creativity could see the Cleveland Air Show lifted to another level and still provide an economic boost for the region. Another airport could take up the challenge. In July, the Lorain County Airport announced a $68 million expansion that would see its main runway lengthened to 6,500 feet, nearly the same as the current 6,600-foot runway at Burke. The airport hopes to take some commercial and cargo operations from Cleveland's airports and could be an option if Burke closes. Whether or not Lorain or another airport like Akron-Canton could host a large air show like Cleveland and obtain a military jet team remains to be seen. Regardless of what happens, it seems that the end is nearing for Burke Lakefront's nearly 90-year run as a downtown airport in Cleveland, and that future development is imminent. Time will tell if Cleveland comes to appreciate or regret its decision to close this unique and historic airport. For now, Make plans to attend the 2026 Cleveland National Air Show and make those memories with your friends and family while you still can. Thank you for watching. Please check out my other videos if you like aviation content in and around Cleveland, Ohio, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Follow me on social media for more. The links to all research materials are down in the description below. Thank you so much for watching.